Bruce Lee. Even if you've never thrown a punch in your life, he's got to be up there in your imagination, right? This guy's an icon. And today, deep dive time into his life, his legacy. We're talking the OG Wikipedia article here, sometimes simple's best. And let me tell you, there is way more to this man than meets the eye.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone knows the martial arts, the fight scenes, that's a given. But there's this whole other depth to him, the philosophy, the artistry, even his struggles in Hollywood. It's a story.
Isn't it, though? We all know about the fists of fury, the speed. But did you know Bruce Lee, born in San Francisco?
True story. Born in the U.S., but they moved back to Hong Kong when he was just a baby.
Okay, so right off the bat, you've got that East meets West thing going on. No wonder he was able to bridge those worlds later on.
Exactly. And it plays out through his whole life, like his father, Cantonese opera star. So performance, that world, it was in Bruce Lee's blood from day one. Heck, he's in a movie as a baby.
Whoa, talk about an early start. Didn't necessarily have it easy, though, did he?
Oh, not all sunshine and roses. School, he had his troubles. Liked a good scrape, let's put it that way. And testing out those fighting skills. Not just in the classroom. It got to the point his family sent him back to the U.S. partly for his own safety.
Okay, so back to America. Teenager again. What's next for Bruce Lee?
Finishes up high school in Seattle, but he's already teaching martial arts on the side. And this is where it gets interesting. This is where he starts to really create his own personal style. Jinfan Gung Fu, he called it.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, that's like the precursor to Jeet Kune Do.
Right. But even back then, with Jinfan Gung Fu, Lee's pushing boundaries. This isn't just him copying his teachers. He's taking bits from here, bits from there, mixing it all up. You can see it coming. That drive to create something new.
So not about mastering one thing perfectly, but figuring out what works, adapting it.
Yeah, and that IS Jeet Kune Do, when you get down to it. Less a style, more like a philosophy of combat, right? Lee said it best himself. Using no way as way, adapting to what's in front of you, being fluid, always changing, never static.
Almost like how he lived his life, right? Always adapting, breaking out of any box people tried to put him in.
Exactly. And you even see it in how he butts heads with Hollywood later on, with the whole studio system.
Oh, right. He went to college, even studied drama, right? Because acting, that was always in the cards for him.
It was. But you gotta remember, Chinese man in Hollywood back then, 60s, early 70s, the roles, limited, to say the least, stereotypical.
Hitting those barriers, even with that much talent, makes you wonder, what if he'd had the same chances as some others did?
That's a question that still hangs around, doesn't it? But hey, he did have the Green Hornet, right? That was big.
Kato, the iconic sidekick. I bet most people don't even connect the two. Bruce Lee A.S. Kato.
And that role, it's interesting. On one hand, boom, wider audience, America knows his name. On the other hand, kind of shows the walls he was up against in Hollywood.
How so?
Well, think about it, Kato. Skilled fighter, sure. But they weren't exactly letting Bruce Lee go all out with his martial arts. They wanted it, I don't know, cleaner, more Hollywood.
Can't even imagine how frustrating that must have been for someone so dedicated to his craft. Did he ever push back?
Oh, are you kidding? There are stories about him having to actually slow down his moves because the cameras couldn't catch it.
Wow, they had to slow him down. That's wild. The guy was operating on another level, clearly.
And always pushing,
Yeah.
Even with the Green Hornet doing well, he's still hitting walls, not getting the roles he wanted. That's when he comes up with this idea, The Warrior. A TV series. Shaolin monk traveling through the American West. Lee poured his heart into it from what I've read.
I've heard about this, yeah. Sounds like a home run concept, especially with Bruce Lee attached. What happened? Why'd it fall apart?
Well, the story goes, and this is according to Lee, that the execs, they didn't think America was ready for an Asian lead. Can you believe that?
Get out of here. Seriously. Talk about missing the mark.
Right. And it gets worse. A few years later, a show, very similar idea, called Kung Fu, hits the airwaves, but with a white lead.
You're kidding. It's one thing back then. Different times and all. But still. It's nice he had Hong Kong, though.
Right.
That's where it all took off.
Oh, yeah. He goes back, and he's a phenomenon. The Big Boss, Fist of Fury, Enter the Dragon. These weren't just movies, they were events.
And they made him an international star. Which, you gotta admit, kind of poetic in a way.
Yeah.
Breaking down walls, busting stereotypes, but on a global stage.
Exactly. Proving that audiences, they were hungry for something different, something real. And it wasn't just the action. His presence, that philosophy he had, you felt it. Like there was more going on beneath the surface.
Speaking of, I read he had a huge library. And I don't mean just martial arts manuals, but philosophy. Wasn't just about the physical stuff for Bruce Lee.
Not even close. The guy was a thinker. He saw the connection, martial arts and philosophy, especially Eastern stuff. Taoism, big influence there.
Right, right. That whole be like water thing.
Yeah.
Adaptable, flowing, always moving. That was central to his fighting, but also how he lived.
Bingo. He even wrote about it. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water, I think it goes. You put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. Bottle becomes the bottle. Water can flow or it can crash. Man, what a quote. Be water, my friend. Adapting to what's thrown at you.
Love that quote. It's like how to live your life right there.
Lance.
And it wasn't just Taoism either, Jiddu Krishnamurti. He was into him too.
Oh, totally. Self-knowledge, questioning everything you think you know, not being afraid to go against the grain. Very Bruce Lee when you think about it.
So he takes these ideas, these big concepts, and he lives them, not just talking the talk.
That's it, walking the walk every step. And it shows. That's part of what people connect with. But there's this whole other side to his art that doesn't get talked about much. His poetry.
Hold on, Bruce Lee. Poetry. Now that's a curveball. What's it like?
Not exactly sonnets and haikus, put it that way. Raw, you know. Introspective. He gets into some heavy stuff. Self-doubt, death, even the pressure he put on himself. Gets kind of dark, honestly.
Wow. So much more than just the fighter, huh? He was wrestling with real stuff, just like the rest of us. Makes you think.
It really does. And it makes his story, the way it ended, all the more tragic.
Man, to think all that gone so young, it's hard not to wonder what else he had in him.
Seriously. 32. And he was just getting started, you know? Films, sure, but martial arts, writing. He had ideas.
He was filming Game of Death when he passed, right?
Yep. And get this, the concept. He wanted to ditch the usual martial arts formulas, get deeper, self-discovery, enlightenment, that kind of stuff.
No kidding. That's too bad it never got finished.
Well, bits and pieces came out, but not his vision, you know? And that kind of sums it up, the tragedy of it all.
Okay.
Here's Bruce Lee, always changing, pushing boundaries, and we only got a taste of what he could do.
It does make you think. Longer life, would Hollywood have come around to his way of seeing things?
Who knows? But visionary, absolutely. He saw what those films could be. Not just fighting, but something more. Deeper meaning, busting stereotypes, bridging cultures.
And he did it while being wildly entertaining. Those fight scenes, still amazing to watch.
Right. The way he moved, it was like grace and power all at once. He wasn't just fighting, he was making art. That's part of why we're still talking about him, I think. He defied expectations about martial arts, about actors, about everything, really. Became an icon. Still inspires people.
So after this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope sticks with people about Bruce Lee?
To me, it's bigger than just martial arts, bigger than one man's life even. It's about breaking those limits we put on ourselves, you know? Not letting anyone tell you what you can or can't do, finding your passion and going all in. That's a message that never gets old.
It really doesn't. Bruce Lee, he reminds us we can all do more than we think we can. And on that note, that wraps up our deep dive. Hope you enjoyed